You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. This morning we begin with a look at the most hotly contested race in Butler County this fall. Coming out of the primaries last spring, the race for Hamilton County Prosecutor featured John Holcomb, the tough 27-year prosecutor who held the distinction of being the lone Democrat elected countywide in an overwhelmingly Republican Butler County. Squared off against the incumbent was Robin Piper, who had served 15 years as an assistant prosecutor under Holcomb before leaving for private practice in 1998. The contest was bitter from the start. Holcomb, in his classic no-holds-barred style, used the investigative arm of his office to dig up an old minor misdemeanor marijuana arrest of Piper in northern Ohio while he was in college. Piper responded by criticizing the use of prosecutorial resources for political purposes. He also attacked Holcomb's management of the prosecutor's office, including his practice of collecting 2% from the wages of his employees for his re-election campaign, and his failure to bring several key cases to trial in a timely manner. Then, on July the 22nd, John Holcomb died suddenly of a heart attack. He was replaced in the office by 15-year assistant Dan Gettermeyer as acting prosecutor and Democratic nominee for the office.
The difference is, and it always has been, integrity. I have always been 100% straightforward and honest and tough with the way I handle my cases.
Last spring, some of you might remember, I interviewed Mr. Piper alone, next to an empty chair, because Mr. Holcomb first agreed to appear with his opponent and then refused days before the taping. This fall, I have worked diligently to get both contestants of this important race on Newsmakers together. We juggled dates for weeks, primarily because Mr. Gettermeyer's office could never make a commitment for him because of his schedule. About 3 weeks ago, we settled on taping for Friday, October the 20th. Last week, Mr. Gettermeyer's office called to say a 3-day trial had come up for that day. So we moved the taping to Tuesday, October the 17th, at Mr. Gettermeyer's request. It appeared, however, that Mr. Piper had a conflict, and I was faced with doing separate interviews. Acceptable, but not the best for voters trying to make up their mind between two first-time candidates. Then last Friday, Mr. Piper was able to rearrange his schedule to be here on the 17th, today. I called Mr. Gettermeyer's office to inform him. Yesterday, on Monday the 16th, Mr. Gettermeyer's office informed me he would not be available, saying he now needed a full day for trial preparation. Given firm commitments for all newsmakers before Election Day, my only choice is to interview Mr. Piper by himself. Schedules are always a problem, and people of goodwill have to cancel at the last minute from time to time. I understand that. I have never met Mr. Gettermeyer. I have met Mr. Piper only once. I cannot read motivations, but viewers, voters have the right to know why only one candidate appears. As a result, I am joined simply by one candidate, Mr. Robin Piper. Mr. Piper served as an assistant Butler County Prosecutor for 14 years. In early 1999, Mr. Piper left the prosecutor's office and opened his own law practice. Robin, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Well, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
I want to just add one thing, since I even wrote that introduction, that this morning when I came into the station, I found out that a press conference has been called in Hamilton, not by Mr. Gettermeyer, but by the Democratic candidate for sheriff, who apparently is going to, Mr. Laney, who is going to, and why he's not attacking the sheriff, he's attacking you. And I will just read this. In a press conference, Mr. Laney will present compelling documentary evidence of Robin Piper's past and perhaps continuing felonious conduct. Mr. Piper is the Republican candidate for Butler County Prosecuting Attorney who has been endorsed by the Republican Sheriff, Harold Don Gabbard. Do you have any idea what they're going to attack you with this morning, at the very time that we're supposed to be taping this?
Yeah, I have no idea. I would like to emphasize that I want the viewers to know that I went out of my way to make my schedule available to conform to Mr. Gettermeyer's schedule.
You did.
And he said he could be here on the 17th. And he changed his mind after he knew I was going to be here. You know, it seems funny to me that the Democratic members can say things about me at press conferences, but yet they can't come and say things in front of me. They can't come and talk with me. They can talk about me. And I think that's something that the voters should take note of.
Any idea what this is? And can you respond?
I can't respond because I have no idea what it is. I mean, that's why they don't want to talk with me being present, because I could respond. But the fact of the matter is, Laney is a person who's running for sheriff. He's jealous. He has no endorsements. And I have the endorsement of Sheriff Gabbard, Governor Taft, Senator DeWine, Jim Petro has endorsed me, and Laney is jealous. He's very desperate.
Let's go on to some real issues.
One other thing I want to tell you about Laney is, if the viewers saw in the past how John Holcomb used J.C. Kristonoff for political purposes.
Kristonoff was the person who did the research for Holcomb, right? And did the digging using your Social Security number.
Right.
Okay.
Hopefully the people are seeing that Gettermeyer is using Laney.
Okay, let's move on to some real issues. You had some real criticisms of John Holcomb's way of handling the prosecutor's office,
Yes.
where you worked for years.
Yes.
You now have a new candidate.
Yes.
Mr. Gettermeyer, as I understand, very quickly did away with the 2% rule.
Not entirely.
Explain that,
Well,
because that's the impression that I had.
I mean, catch the hypocrisy here. He says that he did away with the 2% club, but the real thing, Dan, that did away with the 2% club was Mr. Holcomb's unfortunate demise. That stopped the payments according to those forms that were filled out. So all he didn't do is he didn't reinstitute it. But it was my candidacy, as you pointed out in your introduction, that well over a year ago said it was wrong to have a 2% club and take part of a person's wages. So now Mr. Gettermeyer, after taking the full 2% club money, says, well, I'm going to print literature with that money saying I ended it. I mean, it's hypocrisy.
So
he took the money.
So the money that had been collected from the 2% payments was in a fund.
Yes.
And now Mr. Gettermeyer is using that
Mr.
fund?
Gettermeyer took that money, and now he's printing up literature saying
But he's no longer collecting the 2%. I do want to be clear about that.
He is no longer instituting the program where he himself is collecting it. But he's using the money to print literature saying, bragging, that he stopped the 2% club.
Okay. Secondly, I want to, back in the spring when you were here, you raised a number of questions about the efficiency of that office in terms of bringing cases to trial, as I mentioned. Has that changed under, I mean, we got a new person here. Has that changed? Have there been reforms in process here?
No, it hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, I don't like stereotypes, but between me, the Republican candidate, and Gettermeyer being the Democratic candidate, we seem to find some parallels that do come true. While Mr. Gettermeyer has been in office, he's had his name printed up on Frisbees. This is, by the way, his campaign colors. I guess that's a coincidence, but he's had.
You might want to hold that up.
Well,
I don't think we got that on there.
He's had his name printed on Frisbees, and this is printed with taxpayer money. His campaign workers are handing this out at functions. He thinks that's okay in his judgment.
Well, this was in fact, again, to try to be fair here, Kay Rogers, the auditor, raised a question about this, but hasn't the conclusion been that it's technically what's happened is not illegal because even though it has its name on it, it is dealing with the victim, trying to talk about the victim witness program.
Sure.
So I just want to be clear about this.
But the thing that you can't get away from is that he has his campaign workers handing it out. Not employees of the prosecutor's office, his campaign workers are handing that out.
Okay.
And Kay Rogers didn't want to force it into litigation, and she was ordered by the prosecutor to pay the bill. And since he's a county advisor, she did finally pay the bill. But that's his judgment. We hear him talking about expanding the office. He's already said that he wants an increased budget in the year 2001. I think we need to
Butler County is a growing place.
Sure.
Is it not fair to say that maybe the prosecutor's office needs to expand?
Well, you know, if you're only in office for 2 months, don't you think you need to run that office professionally and appropriately within that 2 months before you start coming out with statements about how you need more money and want to expand the office and you want a larger budget? The fact of the matter is, he was the chief of the criminal division. Dan, while being the chief of the criminal division, you have 88 counties in Ohio. Butler County is the 9th largest. In 1988, when he's the chief of that criminal division, Butler County is responsible for 1/3 of the county-wide cases or the statewide cases lost on time. In other words, statewide in 1998, if you had about 170 cases throughout the whole state lost on time, dismissed, no accountability by the defendant, Butler County is responsible for 1/3 of them 50-some cases.
And you're saying that that wasn't just Holcomb, but that Gettermeyer was directly responsible for that part of the operation in the office. I just want to be clear.
Absolutely. His literature boasts that he was the chief of the criminal division. So either he doesn't know about these statistics, or he's been incapable of providing the leadership to change it.
What was your job when you were with that office? I mean, the two of you were really pretty parallel, right?
Yes,
in terms
we were.
of when you came in the office?
When we were both in the office, we both handled criminal felony cases. If you looked at the dockets, you'll see that I handled more of the serious cases. I've handled more capital punishment cases than him. I've handled more aggravated murder cases than him. I've handled more of the high-profile cases, quite frankly, than Mr. Gettermeyer. Now, he says that he has the Fuller case. Of course, Mr. Fuller gave a confession. That's the only capital punishment case in Butler County that I'm aware of that he's handled.
And I don't know one way or the other. I don't have any statistics on that.
Sure.
There was this recent decision in a capital case where the judge overruled a jury's recommendation for capital punishment.
Right.
My understanding is that both of you independently came out and criticized the court for that ruling. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct.
Okay.
I criticized the system. I did not criticize the court or criticize the judge. What I said is that we ought to have a system. If 12 members of a jury say that the justice is death penalty, and if the judge goes along with it, the defendant gets a right to an independent review. I came out and said, why can't the system be fair to the victims of Ohio? Why can't prosecutors, if a judge doesn't go along with the jury's determination of justice, why can't the prosecutor, on behalf of the victims in Ohio, appeal to an independent court for review? And maybe they'll say, Judge, we see your concerns, we think you're right. Maybe they'll say, Judge, we see your concerns, we think the jury was right. But why can't it be a level playing field? And what I wanted the members to see is I'm going to be proactive. I'm not just fighting in the courtroom, I'm going to fight even after the courtroom.
Is there any state that allows that, though? My impression is that it's the person who's been convicted, the defendant first, who gets to appeal that sort of thing. Does any state allow that sort of appeal in death penalty cases?
I haven't done a statewide, I haven't looked statewide at all states throughout Ohio. What I do know is what I proposed does provide for all the due process and safety concerns of the defendant, and I think it will hold constitutionally. And I talked with Representative Cates about this, and they're going to have their legislative committee look into it.
We only have about 45 seconds left.
All right.
What do you think is the key issue between now and election that you would like people to focus on?
Professionalism and accountability. Those are the two themes of my candidacy. And what I'd like the viewers to know is that I expect the Democrats to keep up with their dirty politics, so to speak, and I'd like for them to keep in mind that when somebody resorts to dirty politics, it's because they don't want to talk about my track record, they don't want to talk about my professionalism, and they don't want to talk about my willing to make the office accountable to the taxpayers of Butler County.
Robin, thank you for being here. I appreciate your juggling your schedule and dealing straight with me.
Well, Dan, as always, it's a pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. After the break, Issue 1, environmental initiative or political boondoggle. There's a difference of opinion.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome back. I know I just said we would turn to Issue 1. Well, I lied. We taped the interview you just saw with Robin Piper on Tuesday, October the 17th. A few hours after that taping, Mr. Gettermeyer called and said he would rearrange his schedule to be here on Friday, the original date we had set. Dan Gettermeyer has worked for 15 years as an assistant prosecutor in Butler County. When John Holcomb, who served as the prosecutor for 27 years, died in July, Mr. Gettermeyer was appointed to fill his unexpired term and then to fill a spot on the Democratic ticket for prosecutor. I began by asking Mr. Gettermeyer about what he has tried to preserve in the prosecutor's office and what changes he has instituted. Mr. Gettermeyer, you took over the prosecutor's office from John Holcomb back in July when he died. You worked for him for 15 years. What are the values, what are the qualities of Mr. Holcomb's administration that you want to continue? And also, what are the things that you would like to change and improve?
Well, you know, Mr. Holcomb was just absolutely revered as a prosecutor. He was a great prosecutor, and he taught us so much. One of the things was the idea and the attitude of being tough on crime. We want to continue that. Another thing was a work ethic that just was nonstop, and we have continued that. And so in addition to those things, I'd like to add or expand a little bit on certain things. And one of the things I've done, for instance, is I've established a domestic violence unit. I think that's the future of prosecution, is a little bit more specialization. And the domestic violence unit is an opportunity that we have to have specialization in that particular area. Now, another thing that I've done since I've had the opportunity to be the prosecutor is that I've expanded the outreach program that we have to the police agencies and to the fire departments to provide training to them. This is an important aspect, I think, of the prosecutor's office. It allows...
What sort of training would you...
Well, we've done this. Since I've been in the prosecutor's, I've personally gone out and done the training. We talk to the officers about what they can expect when they come to court. We give them a little background of the whole court system just to refresh them. And we talk to them about what they can expect both from direct and cross-examination. Talk to them about evidence issues, about collecting evidence, and talk to them about general updates on case laws. I think one of the things we did, which was has worked out really well, is we talked to the fire departments about this, because what we found in our cases was a lot of times the fire department emergency personnel are the most important witnesses in some cases, because, for instance, in a death scene situation where there's a body on the ground, a lot of times they're the first one there. So we've expanded it to that.
One of the issues in this campaign has become the 2% Club, where Mr. Holcomb asked employees to donate 2% of their salary for his campaign. What has been your policy on that?
Dan, when I became the prosecutor, I did end the 2%, what's been called the 2% Club fundraising practice. It never was an illegal practice, and I appreciate the way that you've phrased it and characterized what it is, but really, it never really was a requirement that anybody give any money that had anything to do with their job, but it was characterized as that, and I did end that practice when I became the prosecutor.
Isn't it in fact true, though, that you have used the proceeds that have been built up in the 2% Club for your campaign?
Well, we did receive the money from the Holcomb campaign. You know, that money is going exactly where it was intended to go, which is for this campaign to keep the staff that we have in place now doing a great job that they're doing for the county.
Another one of the major issues in this campaign that has arisen is the whole issue of cases lost on time. Your opponent, Mr. Piper, has recently said that in the state of Ohio in 1998, 170 cases were lost on time because they weren't brought to court soon enough and the defendant got away. In Butler County, he claims, over 50 of those cases took place. What do you say about that?
Well, I'm very disappointed in him if he's still telling you that, Dan, because as we sit here, I'm sure that he knows that those statistics that he cited in his most recent round of misinformation about that were incorrect. If he would have simply called the area court in Butler County where he claims 55 of those cases were lost on time, he would have found out those were clerk errors as they reported it to the Supreme Court, and in fact there were no cases lost on time. Not 55, none. And you see, he has presented this as a fact when in fact he's lost cases on time, even though he came to your show before and told you that he never lost a case on time. He had, and he knew it. And he presented...
Is this the Scharf case?
He did lose the Scharf case on time.
He claims that he didn't really, that case never came to him until after, since that person was in prison, never came to him until after it had already been lost on time. It was never assigned to him until it was already over.
Okay. That's not true. The facts of that case were that he had it well within time to set it for trial.
In fact, he says in the Scharf case, which I think you're referring to, that case never came to him, never got to his hands until after the lost on time, the time period had already run out, because the Scharf had not been informed. He was already in prison and was not informed in time about the pending prosecution against him.
That's not true, Dan. If he said that to you, he was telling you something that wasn't true, because he had that case at the grand jury in time to try it before the time ran out. You see, lost time cases are a rarity. Some have to be tried in 30 days, some 90, some 180, some 270. They're a rarity. They don't happen. It's never good when they do. But he lost that one on time, and the records clearly show that.
One of the other issues here is that Mr. Piper says that you are proposing to expand the office, to ask for new money for new assistant prosecutors. Is that true, and why are you doing that?
Well, I do expect to request a little bit more money for additional assistant prosecutors in particular areas, for instance in the civil division and in the appellate division, because of the increased caseload. Our caseload is it's skyrocketing. And so we need additional assistance in those areas to address the needs of the appellate division and in the civil division. You know, we have a whole civil division that responds to other office holders' requests for information. And another thing I think is important is I'd like to see additional money provided for the Victim Witness Assistance Program. It's a really good program that we have in our office, and we'd like to see a little bit more money put into that.
You know, this race has gotten really pretty personal. You have charged Mr. Piper with not being fit for this office because of a marijuana conviction way back in his early life. What do you say is the issue here, and why is he not, are you saying he's not fit for office?
Well, one of the differences between Robin Piper and I, and it's an important difference, is that Robin Piper does have a conviction for marijuana use, and that he lied about it on his bar application, and when asked about hard drug use, he indicated that he said, "Assume I did them all." It goes to the issue of whether there can be public trust in the prosecutor's office, whether people feel confident and feel the trust they need to have in the prosecutor's office, and I think that's a big issue.
That statement which you're citing about assume I did all things or all drugs, my understanding from Mr. Piper is that he said that to newspaper people who were peppering him about this question of this old drug charge, and he just said that somewhat in frustration and basically saying, I'm not going to convince you of anything, just you can assume anything you want, rather than saying that in fact he did everything. Are you telling me that you think he did hard drugs?
Yes, it is, because that's what he said. That's what he said. He said, assume I did them all.
There's a difference here now between the citation for the marijuana, and this now goes way beyond that, because he's never been cited or convicted of anything else in that area. Is that correct?
The conviction was for marijuana usage. The statement, assume I did them all, was in response to questions about other hard drug usage.
And you assume that he did do them all?
Yes.
There's only about 2 weeks in the campaign left. As you go into those 2 weeks, what are the most important issues in this race?
The most important issues really are, what have I been able to provide for the prosecutor's office for this county? What I've been able to do is, since I've come in, and I've only been in a short time, I've established new programs. I've been in court fighting crime. I've established a leadership philosophy and style which says, let's address the issue, let's fight the crimes hardest where the victims are children. And I believe that's important. And I think there also is an important aspect of the campaign where you have to consider whether his admitted drug usage and his conviction for drug possession presents the kind of leadership and trust that we want in the prosecutor's office.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, the congressional races. Have a good week.